So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by the one and only Frank Turner. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm at home. The sun is shining. I've got coffee. It could be worse. Let's say that.
And it sounds like you've had a very busy summer behind you. So 50 states in 50 days. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible idea, or at least it felt like that in the middle, let me tell you that. I've toured America for 15 years now, and I'd already played 47 states, and I had a conversation a few years ago, actually before the pandemic, with my booking agent about how I wanted to get those last three in, and he said, well, I'll just book you 3 shows then. And I was said, well, we could do all of them in one go, and then that became all of them in 50 days and this. I'm the third person to ever do it. I now know why I'm only the third person to ever do it, which is that it's a nightmare. I'm very glad I did it. Very glad I'll never have to do that again. And it was fun. I don't mean to do it down. It was a good time, and I have now been to Wyoming, and that's a nice thing.
Have you got a highlight from that tour?
Yeah, I mean, we had, I think, I'll get crucified for saying this, but I think the best show was the show in Denver, Colorado. That was like absolutely off the chain. I got to invite some of my very favourite bands out on the tour. We had the Bronx for the whole tour. We had Avail did some of the East Coast Bouncing Souls, AJJ. Like, it was particularly Avail. I used to go and see Avail all the time in the 90s in London, and I hadn't seen them since 1999, and then they opened for us for 4 shows, and 16, 17-year-old me had a heart attack. It was awesome.
And we have to talk about your album as well. So FTHC went to #1 earlier this year. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So you're having that out in the world now?
It feels good. I mean, it was a record made in very weird circumstances, and obviously, broadly speaking, the last 2 years have been pretty miserable for musicians generally. That is the headline. But at the same time, I think it's quite a different record to what it would have been if there hadn't been a pandemic and all the rest. And it meant that I got a lot more time to focus on it and to kind of dive into it. And, I wanted to make a punk record that was quite personal. It ended up going a long way down both of those roads, which it might not otherwise have done. There was a lot more kind of development and demoing and that kind of thing. So I think it came out better than it might otherwise have done. So happy days. We got the #1. I have a mixed relationship with that fact, because when I was a kid, it was a huge point of pride for me that I didn't like anything that was in the charts, and that my sort of identity as a kid was I was like, I was underground punk rock kid who didn't care about the charts and la la la. And 16-year-old me is still kind of furious about everything, really. But at the same time, it's pretty cool, and you get a little statue of a 1, which is kind of cool. So I don't want to be silly about it. It's very nice. I'm very proud of it. My mum was really proud.
Yeah, it's not a bad title to have, is it? #1 album.
Yeah, I mean, and again, to be honest, I don't mean to repeat myself, but it's a bit like the 50 States thing. I've done it, and it means I don't really have to worry about doing it again.
And so 9 albums in as well, and it seems like on this record in particular, like you said, it gets very personal, it's very raw. Was that your intention going into it, that this was going to be?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, as I say, that got more intense because I had more time doing nothing, like everybody. I finished Netflix, and then it was like, what now? Intense songs. But I used to write in quite a sort of visceral, personal way on a lot of my earlier records, and I went off and wrote about other things, and that's all to the good. But it was kind of fun to come back to it. It was interesting to come back to it a little bit older. Do you know what I mean? I just turned 40, and that's largely awful, but the consolation of getting older is that you're a little bit more kind of settled in yourself, a little bit more secure about who you are and all the rest. And that fact to me means that you can fish in slightly deeper waters in a way. Do you know what I mean? So there are some songs on the record about my childhood and growing up and all that kind of thing, and I just was not ready to talk about that until comparatively recently. So yeah, I mean, it was. There was a degree to it as well. It's like if you tell people, I've written a personal record, you've got to then do it. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit like, let's not tiptoe around this, shall we? Do you know what I mean? Let's actually go for this. So it was it's cathartic to write like that. It's also a little bit terrifying. You get to a moment when, particularly, it's like when you're mixing the record, so you've already finished recording, and then you listen back to one of the lines and you go, oh my god, what am I doing? Like, people are going to listen to this. Like, quite a few people are going to listen to this. But publishing be damned.
And there were like some songs in particular that they just really like hit that note. They just, you know, you sort of like hear something and it just sits with you for a while. And you're like, I can't really believe you said that, but I'm glad that you said that.
Well, that's exactly my intention, actually. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
I think in particular, like Untainted Love, that was one of my favourite ones. And I think also how like the subject matter is very dark, but then when you've got like the musicality and the sonic elements, it sort of feels a bit like triumphant. Like I can imagine it like on something like a festival stage, like it's very sort of big.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean. And like, I think I've always had a bit of a taste in music for like sad songs that sound happy or whatever, or you know, just it's nice to have that kind of contrast at some of the times. You know what I mean? But there's a catharsis to it. You know, I like. And it's actually, this is one of the funny things, like I haven't really played this record live in the UK yet, do you know what I mean? And that's quite unusual. Usually I'd tour up to an album release and through an album release and but like, you know, we'll see how it goes over. Fingers crossed, eh? But like, it is like, there is something kind of, it's odd. It's almost like perverse, but it is one of my favorite things about what I do, is to stand on a stage and shout something about life being hard and awful and weird, and then loads of other people shout it at the same time, and you go, hooray! You know what I mean? Like, and it can be a little puzzling sometimes. I have an older song of mine called Plain Sailing Weather. It briefly is about me being a bad person, and I've played that song to many thousands of people singing it with me, and it's kind of like, I hope, are you guys like agreeing that I'm a bad person, or are you sort of sympathizing with it? Do you know what I mean? Where's this kind of landing here? But ultimately, yeah, it's cathartic, and it's a great privilege to do that.
Do you have like a standout track from the record, or like?
Oh, I shouldn't pick favourites. But I mean, I will say I do enjoy the first track on the record, Non Serviam. I mean, it sort of had to be the first song on the record, that with how it is musically. But it's kind of cool. I spent, in a way that was weirdly useful, I spent quite a lot of time talking about the new record before I'd actually finished writing it. And I told everybody, oh yeah, it's going to be a really heavy punk record. And then it was like, I've actually now got to do that. You know what I mean? I've got to deliver on because quite often, you know, a band will chat about how their new record's going to be really different, and then it's exactly the same, but there's a slightly different drum sound or something, and it's just like, whatever. And it was like, I told everyone it was going to be an aggressive punk rock record, and it was like, oh boy, now I have to write an aggressive punk rock record. And I've written that song, and it was like, it's got to go track one, really, hasn't it? Where else is it going to go? And yeah, it was kind of, it's been a lot of fun playing that one live, and there are some people who like my music because of solo acoustic stuff or Where I Tend to Be or whatever it might be, and it's like, that's in a different musical zone, and for some people it's kind of slightly over the edge of their kind of tolerance levels or whatever, and you know, we do also play Where I Tend to Be, don't worry, that's still in the set, but it's like, it's quite fun to just sort of knock that one out and see some people kind of go, yikes.
I imagine like one of your sets, it must be like musical whiplash, just like you've got the sort of acoustic and then you've got like, the punk side.
Well, part of my job is to try and sort of like make them sound coherent as a body of work. Do you know what I mean? It's not quite the case that I go from like finger picking to like maybe once in a gig, but you know, you've got to bring people with you. Do you know what I mean?
And have you got like a favourite one to play live?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a sucker for the sing-along, and I often in my life I can put this in really highfalutin philosophical ways and talk about how music becomes interesting to me when it's a dialogue rather than a monologue, and that an exchange of energy in a collective fashion in the room is the thing that enthralls me about live music, and blah blah blah. But this is, like I say, just fancy ways of saying sing-alongs at 8, and you know, anything that just gets a whole room moving, singing, I'm into it. Punches has been a lot of fun to play live since the record came out. That one seems to have, pun intended, landed with quite a lot of people, and that's nice. I mean, to be honest, at this point in my career, anytime that a new song lands with an audience, it's like, whew, because it's definitely. I'm aware that a lot of people have a lot of love for songs I wrote in the past, and that's great. I'm really, really grateful for that. But like, it's nice when one of the new ones kind of joins the club. You know what I mean?
You recently released a new version of Little Life with Katie Tunstall. How did that?
Yeah. Katie is somebody I've known a little bit for a long time, and I think what I would say is that, like, as we've mentioned, album 9 and blah blah blah, and it's like I'm not a hot new band coming out with album 2 anymore, if I ever was. There's not that many people who sustain a career over this period of time in the music industry, and even more so who do so on a kind of like boutique level. I mean, you've got Coldplay or Mumford & Sons or Forever, and there's that kind of level. But to sort of sustain in a way, I'm not that as successful as those people, but I make a living. Do you know what I mean? I do all right. And those of us who do it over a longer period of time, when you encounter each other, it's quite nice. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we kind of get it. We've sort of done a similar thing. And we cross paths at a few festivals. There's something about like almost being like a journeyman musician. Do you know what I mean? And like a journey person, I should say. Katie has that, and I can't speak for myself, but like, no matter what she's done and where she's been with her career and all the rest of it, at the core of it, she's an absolutely phenomenal live performer. And like, we did a festival with her, and I just watched her kick the crap out of an audience on her own with an acoustic guitar, and it was just like, yes, I like you. And we just got chatting. We got on really well. And I wanted to kind of like give that song another spin, and she was the obvious first choice, and I gave her a shout, and she was just like, absolutely. So here we are.
Is there anyone else that's on your list that you'd really like to collaborate with?
I mean, yeah. I haven't done the most amount of collaboration in my life, to be honest. I've always been quite sort of heading off doing my own thing, or whatever. There's people I'd like to collaborate with. I mean, if you're doing the Dream Team thing, I'd probably say Robbie Robertson, who's the main guy in the band. And the thing about the band for me is that they were the greatest rock and roll band of all time, and their arrangement and their taste for other people, their own and for other people's music material is incredible. I'd love to work with Robbie Robertson. I don't think it's likely, but you never know. But then, I mean, it's funny because at the other end of it, it's like there's loads of people whose music I adore, but it's like I don't quite know what I would add to like Nina Simone or whatever. She was perfect, and it's like, what am I going to do? Stand there with a tambourine? Like, do you know what I mean? I think there's quite a lot of bands or songwriters or whatever who I adore, and I don't feel the need to like try and put myself in that photo.
And you've been doing some producing as well. So we had the new album, Primetime Entertainment, you've been working on.
Yeah.
What is it like? Sort of like being the other side of like the music process and like working with them as well.
I love it. I love it. And I'm kind of surprised to discover that I love it. Prior to lockdown, it wasn't really on my to-do list to do this kind of stuff. I gave myself a project to stop myself going mental of learning about sort of audio engineering, basically, and ended up building a studio because that's the kind of thing I do, start a hobby and go, one of the things I've really enjoyed about it is that there's a ton of things to being a producer that are about kind of arrangement work and just often about experience of making records, of which I have a ton. I don't have as much experience of setting compressors and moving microphones and stuff, but like I know how to arrange a song, and particularly working with kind of newer, younger bands, it's just really kind of fun being able to pass that information on, you know. There's a lot of stuff that I know that I didn't really think was specialised knowledge, but it is to some people. Like I was working with a younger band the other day, and I was like, let's double track the guitars and the chorus, and they were like, excuse me? And I was like, oh wow, this is going to blow your mind. Do you know what I mean? It was just kind of nice to be able to pay that forward a bit. You know, it is also in part a way of kind of hopefully making a bit of a living that doesn't involve touring as I get older and that kind of thing. But, you know, I moved out to Essex, and there's a lot of really, really cool punk bands around here and folk acts. There's the Wilford Boys, there's the Meffs, Blooms, there's Pat Needs, obviously. There's Ben Brown. There's loads of really cool stuff around here, and I've been trying to work with those people. And it's kind of cool to feel part of a local scene.
And you're bringing Pet Needs on tour with you as well later this year.
I certainly am, yes.
And so
they're great. We had them in the States as well, actually. They'd never been to America before, and they did 36 of the 50 states. I thought that was pretty good. And they killed America as well. They kicked the crap out of them. It was awesome. They're amazing. I think they're a brilliant band. Their new record comes out on Friday. People should check it out.
I have a bit of a quick fire round for you as well.
Hit me.
What was the first album you bought?
First time I bought was Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden.
What was the last song that you listened to?
The last song I listened to was a song called Pictures on Your Insta by Tippy McGarry, who, full disclosure, is my cousin, but she's amazing and you should check out her stuff.
What is your favourite song of the year so far?
Favourite song of the year so far? That is a good question. Actually, there's a songwriter called Dave Bazan who releases music as Pedro the Lion, and there's a song called First Drum Set on his new record that is an absolute banger.
What is the best advice that you've been given?
The best advice I've been given? Do the washing up. But I mean, more specifically, what I mean with that, when I was doing early days touring when you're crashing in people's houses, the idea was leave the place you stayed nicer than when you showed up. Do you know what I mean? So if somebody offers you their floor to sleep on, sleep at their floor and then do the washing up in the morning without being asked, and leave it nicer, and they'll ask you back next time around.
That is some very good advice. What is your karaoke song?
Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell, but the 9-minute version, not the 5-minute version.
Do you have a hidden talent?
Do I have any talents? Do I have a hidden talent? Probably not. No. I mean, no. I mean, I know lots and lots about Eastern European history.
That's a good one.
Is that a talent? I don't know. That's just remembering stuff.
What is your most memorable interaction with a fan?
I mean, I've had lots of interesting ones over the years, but I mean, generally speaking, they're overwhelmingly positive on balance, he said very, very diplomatically. I've had some pretty banana stuff in my time as well, though, I should say. But I mean, I don't know, like, there's been some cool stuff with people talking to me about my songs helping with aspects of their life and that kind of thing, and that is always very, very meaningful to me. So that's not a very specific answer, but I can't really go into more detail than that.
What is your most embarrassing moment?
Oh my god, I mean, where do we even begin? And like, I've never understood how musicians have like gigantic rock star egos, because to me, being on stage is a minefield of potential humiliation every single time you get up there. I once hit myself in the crotch with a microphone in front of 10,000 people at Download Festival. I was doing the Roger Daltrey swing of the mic around thing, and I messed it up, and it just full on hit me in the balls. And it was awful. It was properly awful. And what are you going to do?
How did you style it out?
I thought I sort of did, and afterwards all my friends were like, "You totally didn't."
What has been the highlight of your career so far?
Highlight of my career is that I still have one. That sounds like a dodge, but it's not. Like, when I started doing this, my family were opposed, my friends were skeptical. I was in scrappy punk bands, and then we put out some records and did some touring, and that band broke up and everyone thought that was it. And I started playing folk music and everyone was like, he's gone insane. And then it's like, oh, maybe you have a 2-album run like a lot of bands do. And there's no insult in me saying that. That's often how it works out. And I'm 9 albums in and I still do this for a living, and I'm really proud of that.
And what is something that you'd still like to achieve in your career?
Go to South America. I've been trying to go to South America for a decade, and I was going in April 2020, and anyway, and hopefully I'm going next year.
And what would you like to request a song for me to put on the show?
Oh, yes, I would. Something from the new Pet Needs record.
Okay.
I'll let you choose.
All right, I'll have a listen to that then. And what do you order from Greg's?
Sausage roll. Sausage roll, and right, I will tell you about this. My wife takes the piss out of me for this, but this is true. I have emergency ketchup in my glove compartment of my car.
Yeah.
Right, because sometimes in life you just need ketchup, right? And we not that long ago we were driving and we went to a Greggs and I got a sausage roll and they didn't have any ketchup in the Greggs and I was like, no problem, because I've got emergency ketchup in my car, and I felt like a total champion that day.
I think that's your hidden talent right there.
Right. There we go. Yeah, good.
Okay, well, Frank, it's been lovely to chat to you, and I look forward to the tour.
Thank you very much. I hope to see you at one of the shows. Thank you for your time.